Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Michelle Ascencion, who is the current Assistant County Clerk Recorder for Ventura County. She is one of three candidates that are running to succeed the current County Clerk Recorder, Mark Lunn. But out of the three, there's only been one candidate that actually received his endorsement, and which is Michelle Ascencion. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Michelle Ascencion, Assistant County Clerk Recorder. Michelle,
Yes.
welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to the show. You're definitely no stranger to Oxnard Live. You've been on here a few times, so it's great to have you back on the show. But now you're in a different position. First time you were on the show, you actually were on our debut show back in August of 2020, and you had made the announcement that you were leaving the city of Oxnard and not running. And then the next time that you were on the show, you were with Carmen Ramirez and Lori Brown, the councilwoman from the city of Ventura, as being the first individuals. Lori Brown, the first African female in Ventura City Council, Carmen Ramirez, the first Latina on the Board of Supervisors, and yourself, the first, I believe, woman, an African-American woman in the city clerk position at the city of Oxnard.
Not the first woman.
Not the first woman. Okay. Yeah. But you are the first in the role of the assistant clerk and recorder. Am I right?
The first African-American woman. Yes.
Yes. So definitely not your first time on the show. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak with you and learn a little bit more about your campaign and what you plan on bringing to the office. I know your time at the city clerk's office, you really shook it up, made a lot of great improvements, but also had a lot of bumps along the way that I'm sure many city clerks in their first term do not go through. But let us back up a little bit and find out who is Michelle Ascencion. For those that may not know, which I believe is crazy if you don't know Michelle already, but let's learn a little bit about you. Who is Michelle Ascencion?
Okay, well, I can take you back to the beginning of my Oxnard roots here. In fact, this year, 2022, in July, I'll celebrate 40 years living in Oxnard. My family and I moved here in 1982 when I was 6 years old. The summer, I'll never forget. Shortly after 4th of July, we spent our last 4th of July down in LA where I was born. My parents had heard about this new city, not a new city, but this developing city, I guess, emerging city called Oxnard, about an hour north of where we lived. And they came up one weekend, visited a community of new homes that were being built in the northeast section of the Lemonwood neighborhood, and toured the homes, kind of drove around the city a little bit, and decided on the spot that they wanted to move to Oxnard, just completely relocate. Both of my parents had grown up in LA, my dad born and raised, all of our family was down there, and they decided with one weekend trip that we were going to move to this new city. So we came here in 1982. My dad still lives in the same house to this day that he bought brand new back in that 40 years ago. And most of my upbringing was here in the city of Oxnard. And, I came through the Oxnard School District. I graduated from Santa Clara High School, go Saints, Oxnard College, go Condors, and then transferred to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, where I got my bachelor's degree in journalism. Came back here, worked for a couple of nonprofit agencies, including the Rescue Mission and the American Cancer Society. I also worked for a direct mail house called Data Pros. And then in 2006, I got a job with the city of Port Hueneme. And that was in the city manager's office as the executive specialist, which was kind of like, an administrative support position, but had slightly higher responsibilities as far as like, taking on special projects and things like that. And then for 2 years, I trained with the city clerk at the time, who was, planning her retirement. She planned to retire in 2008. So for 2 years, she taught me, the job. I went to all kinds of trainings from the statewide association, and got really well versed in the city clerk world. And then after she retired in 2008, I became the city clerk. Well, the deputy city clerk. At the time, the city manager held the title of city clerk, but it was the deputy city clerk that did all the work. In 2008, I got my certification from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, which was called the Certified Municipal Clerk designation. And that was as a result of all the training and conference attending and networking and volunteer service that I was giving. You go through 2 to 3 to 4 years, however long it takes you to earn those points, and then you are able to earn the designation. I was with the city of Port Hueneme, eventually working my way up to city clerk / public information officer. So with my journalism and public relations background, I became the PIO for the city. And I was there until January of 2016. Then I got a job as the clerk of the board at the Ventura Regional Sanitation District. And that was a very interesting position because, working at the city, particularly at a small city, you get a really wide breadth of experience, and because I was in the city manager's office and as a city clerk, I read every single staff report that came through before it made it to the council agenda. And that was where I learned a lot about, how cities function and government and, what we need to do to get things approved and purchasing guidelines and infrastructure and all kinds of things like that. So then going to the sanitation district, I became even more well-versed in infrastructure. There we did water, we did wastewater, and we did solid waste management. VRSD, Ventura Regional Sanitation District, is the owner of the Tolan landfill in Santa Paula. So got to know a lot about, that industry. And what was very helpful there was the board of VRSD is made up of the member cities and the member agencies. So each city appointed a representative to serve on this board. So there was Bert Perello from the city of Oxnard. There was Bill Wyrick from the city of Ojai. There was Joel Price from the city of Thousand Oaks. Martin Hernandez from the city of Santa Paula. Kevin Kildee from Camarillo. And, a few other that were there. Oh, and John Sharkey from the city of Port Hueneme. And so that actually came in handy, fast forwarding to today, because now I was able to reach out to them and receive their endorsement because they had seen my work back in 2016 at VRSD. So, I'm starting this new job. It was fascinating work. Really loved my coworkers. It was a great place to work. But then I found out in August of that year that the city clerk in Oxnard, Daniel Martinez, who had served for, was it 6 terms, was not running for re-election. And hey, they need a city clerk. I have the background. I live in Oxnard. I'm eligible. It was my time. I stepped forward to, as a candidate to run. Me and 7 other candidates that year. It was a pretty packed ticket. But I ended up succeeding based on, the experience that I brought to, from the past, from going back all the way to 2006 from my start of my public service career. And I was elected in November. And that was a huge honor. Started there in December of 2016 at the city of Oxnard. It was an action-packed 4 years. We had, like you mentioned, the formation of the districts for the first time, the attempted recall of 4 of the 5 council members at that time. And then with the district formation, there were two new districts, two new seats that were added to the city council. So now it became a 7-member board. Seeing how those new districts were in South Oxnard, which didn't traditionally have a whole lot of representation on the board, I took it upon myself as the city clerk to hold some candidate workshops so that people could have a better understanding of just what it is that a city council member does before they try to jump in and run for that seat. You know, I just wanted people to be educated. You tend to make better decisions that way. You know, we accomplished a whole lot. We did a whole lot of work in a short amount of time. And the reason the recall election was so notable was because well, number one, it was 4 of the 5 council members. I mean, that's huge. But the timing of how the petitions were submitted and the verification of the signatures and you know, all the preliminary steps that have to happen before the recall election it takes place, that pushed the date of the election too close to the June primary of that year. And the county, which normally conducts every election for every city, special district, school district throughout the county, said, sorry, we're not able to do your election. You're on your own. And so for the first time in anyone's memory, we had this standalone election that we had to conduct. It was a huge undertaking. And, you know, the small but mighty city clerk's team pulled it off. And as difficult of an experience as that was, ultimately, it got the attention of the elected county clerk recorder, Mark Lunn. So it's 2020. I'm getting ready to run for re-election as city clerk. I get this call out of the blue. Mark tells me that he's watched my career, and thinks that I would be his assistant clerk recorder was retiring that year. He felt that I would be the perfect replacement, and he wanted to bring me over. You know, groom me to be his eventual successor, to run for his seat. And I mean, it was an offer I couldn't refuse. And as much as I loved Oxnard and city clerking and the art of city clerking, and I was darn good at it, I folded that page on my career and I moved on to the county. Just prior to moving, I did get my the next level certification. So I had my CMC, Certified Municipal Clerk. I then earned the points to become the Master Municipal Clerk level designation. So it was important to me to get that higher designation. There's only 2. It's kind of like a bachelor's and a master's degree. But so I earned that Master Municipal Clerk certification. Joined the county after completing my term in December of 2020. And I've served as the assistant clerk recorder since then. It's been very educational to be in that office. And so I am the number 2 in the office under the elected clerk recorder, and I oversee the 3 divisions of the office, the clerk recorder division, the HR and fiscal division, and then elections, of course, the registrar of voters. Couple huge things that we've undertaken in the time that I've been there. We implemented a whole new records management system called the Land Information System from a company called Tyler Technologies Software. And this was a total upgrade to all of our clerk and recorder maintenance records management system. So it increased efficiency for our staff. It provides a public portal for the public to be able to do their own lookups of documents. And then we also added a module called Fraud Guard, which helps property owners who can register with the system. And then if there's any documents that's recorded either in their name or for their property address, they'll receive a notification, because that's how fraud can happen sometimes. Say, for example, someone's trying to dupe your elderly parents out of their home, and they are successful in getting them to sign over the documents, and they're impersonating you. Well, you will get an alert. If you're signed up for Fraud Guard, you'll get an alert that says, there's been a document that's been recorded in your name or for your property address. And you can look into it that way. Let's see. Oh, okay, so we had our system upgrade. And then normally elections are held every even numbered year. Well, we were lucky enough to get a bonus election in 2021 with the gubernatorial recall in September. And that was helpful for me because I had seen elections from the city side. The county does all the logistical legwork, but we're the liaison with the candidates, the local candidates in the cities. Well, this time I got to see the election from the inside, from the county. And that really helped to give me a better perspective of what it takes to do this undertaking. The recall was exceptionally challenging because we were still dealing with COVID. The recall was called July 1st for September 14th. That's 75 days. We normally have several months of mobilization in order to prepare for a statewide election. We had 75 days. So we were scrambling with that. We also did our second Voters' Choice Act model election, where it was the 3 days of in-person voting rather than just the 1 day of election days. And then the vote centers where you're able to visit any vote center in the county. It was a success. I mean, because it was our second time using that Voters' Choice Act model. I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a long time too. I haven't given you a chance to ask any questions. But it was our second time using that model. And, because it had worked out well in November 2020, September 2021, we decided, okay, we kind of piloted it twice at that point. Let's try to go full Voters' Choice Act, which gives 10 days of early voting at any vote center in the county. But you have to go through an application process with the Secretary of State. You have to develop all these plans for how you're going to, pull this thing off with the 10 days of voting. And so we did that. We submitted our plans, kind of went back and forth with the SOS office because, they wanted some things clarified or revised or whatever. And then in February, we received our approval to become a Voters' Choice Act county, and joining that growing list of counties in the state of California that are adopting that model. It's definitely the wave of the future. This is how elections are going to be conducted for the future. So for June, the June primary, it's going to be our first time doing the 10 days of early voting, and then our regular election day, Tuesday, June 7th. And we're really looking forward to it.
Lots of information. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Probably too much, sorry.
I think half the show's already gone at this point. No, but it's great information. And I kind of laughed when you said 2006 of being in the city clerk's office in Oxnard, because it probably felt that long in those short 4 years. As you mentioned, you led the charge for the district-based elections, going from at-large to district-based. Mm-hmm. You led the charge with multiple ballot initiatives. You
Yes.
led the charge with a recall election, which the last one before the one you led was back when former mayor, the late former mayor, Dr. Manuel Lopez, he was just a council member at that time. So we're talking like what,
The
20,
80s, 90s.
80, 90s that occurred in.
Yeah.
So it was unheard of. And then
Yep.
the fact that, and for those that don't know, the city clerk's office in Oxnard consists of 3 people. It's the elected city clerk, the assistant city clerk, and an office.
Office assistant. Yes.
So it's like the thought that you had to, one, acquire poll workers, acquire a
The polling
consultant,
locations.
the polling locations, a consultant to get all the information out, the advertising, all of this stuff. And with just a small team, in the largest city in Ventura County.
Yeah.
So that
Crazy, right?
it's unheard of. I don't think any city clerk has ever experienced as much bumps in the road as you did in just your first term as city clerk. But it sounds like it made you be in a position that prepares you to be the next county clerk and recorder, because of the fact that you've already had that hands-on experience. But I guess ultimately what led you to say, you know what, I do want to be an elected. In 2020, you just became the assistant clerk and recorder. But what made you say, you know what, I want to take on that elected role. I want to be the one that leads the charge of elections and everything else under that department.
You know, before running for office in 2016, you know, when it was revealed that Mr. Martinez hadn't, you know, pulled papers, or I'm sorry, had not chosen to run for reelection. And so what happens when an incumbent doesn't file? There's a 5-day extension for any other candidates to join the race. And in those 5 days, I had some conversations with my best friend, with my mom, who was alive at the time, with my husband. And, you know, they were all fully in favor of me doing it. I was still hesitant, but finally, you know, I told my husband that I feel like all the opportunities I've had, all the training that I've had, you know, all the experience that I have, you know, from Port Hueneme, from VRSD, I felt like, you know, I wasn't just given these just to have a career, just to make money and feed my family and, you know, put a roof over our heads. And it did all that. But I felt like I really felt like I had a sense of duty. Like I was made for this. I was built for this. I didn't seek these opportunities. When I started at the city of Port Hueneme, I'd never heard of a city clerk. I didn't know what it did. It was like, what is that? The person you pay your water bill with? I mean, I had no idea. But then in learning about it and, you know, training for it, I was really good at it. I had a real knack for it. I had a lot of the skills that are necessary to be a successful city clerk. So sorry, I almost get emotional thinking about it because I feel like, you know, it's God ordained, you know, to go down this path and to walk, you know, in this direction. Yeah, and for Mark to reach out to me in 2020 when I totally wasn't expecting it. And I mean, we'd had a couple of conversations, but frankly, I didn't know that he hardly knew who I was. So for him to say that he'd been watching what I've done and watching my career, it was like, oh, wow, you know. I mean, yeah. And I mean, you know, I'm very driven. I have a strong work ethic. I work hard. You know, my goal is always excellence. I always want to produce a good product and to have my productivity and my output to be the best. But I'm doing that, for me, because if my name's gone on it, I want it to be good. But to know that other people see it and appreciate it, and that it's received so favorably, that's really humbling. That's a really humbling thing. It wasn't anything that I was going after. I'm not trying to toot my own horn and tell people, oh, look how great I am. Look at what a good job I did. I just do it because that's how I'm wired. So it just seemed, once I got over the shock of getting this unexpected phone call, it was like, okay, all right, I guess this is my new direction. Here I go. And here I am.
That's absolutely amazing. And, definitely from, as a resident of the city of Oxnard, someone who serves on a citizen advisory group, we deal with the city clerk's office because we have 700 forms, or even when I ran for my own elections, people always spoke very highly of you in that role as a city clerk. And there has been a lot of improvements from your time being the city clerk of Oxnard. There were improvements to get records requests out faster. It was easier for residents to, be able to request those. Mm-hmm. Joining the mailing list so that you were notified automatically when the agenda was posted for city council meetings, special meetings, whatever it may be. It was all there. So there was a lot of great improvements.
Little things too, right?
Well, sometimes it's the little things that matter. But then it leads me to believe, what does the county have that needs improvement? What are you going to bring to the office? You just mentioned a few things during as being the assistant that have been implemented, but what's next? What more additional improvements can be made in that office? And what about those that say that the election system in Ventura County isn't that strong or even reliable?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. Okay, let's tackle the first part. Actually, if I could just tack on one thing to my previous answer, I was always taught by my parents, my grandparents, you leave things better than you found them. And so that's that goes along part and parcel with my work ethic is, when I left, I was sad to only put in one term at the city of Oxnard. There was more that I wanted to do, but I know that I had left it better than I had found it. So, anyway, okay, that closes that question. All right, so the next one was, what do I want to bring? What do I want to do? So in this first year and a half of kind of learning, and then we kind of had, those two major projects, among other things, like we got slammed with petitions, statewide petitions for ballot measures. So there was the staff time that went into verifying those signatures. Normally the time in between election years is when you're updating manuals, when you're, just kind of reviewing your processes and refining them for the next election cycle. We didn't get to do that in 2021 because of all the petitions that we were slammed with, and then the gubernatorial recall. So I'm hoping in 2023, that's one thing we'll be able to focus on, particularly because that'll be following our first two full Voters' Choice Act elections. So getting the processes documented and refined so that we'll have an easier time in 2024, just getting everything mobilized. One of my priorities is our website. Could use some refreshing. Definitely needs to be more user-friendly for both the public and candidates. So that's a priority in our off year, hopefully off year. And then, just increasing the public information. And then this goes to your second question of, people being uncertain about how elections, how secure elections may be. I can tell you this, Ventura County has not had a problem with elections. We have run very solid, accurate elections for many, many years. And if it were not so, people would have heard about it. But what people are doing is they're hearing about what may be happening in other jurisdictions. And I don't know the validity of those, accusations. And that's not really my concern. My concern is Ventura County. But they're taking those stories and they're saying all elections are like that. And it's like, no, definitely not the case here. Our elections are solid. And for the attempted voter fraud cases that we do have, and I can tell you it's a small, very small percentage of people who attempt to vote twice or try to forge a signature or try to, do whatever else that they try to do to pull one over. Those get referred to the DA's office. And the DA, we do a preliminary investigation. And if it's determined that, this person tried to vote twice, they tried to submit a vote by mail ballot and they tried to show up at the vote center and submit a ballot there. Those get referred to the DA's office. And then the DA, it's in their hands to decide what to do with it. But no, look, election integrity is citizens of the United States of America have a right to vote in elections. And as residents of a particular city or school district boundaries or county, you have a right to participate in those local elections. By registering at your address where you reside, you're entitled to participate in that election. You are entitled to vote one time. And with the Voters' Choice Act model, you are provided multiple options for your convenience, because not everybody can take off of work to come down on a Tuesday when they have to drop their kids off and, all the other responsibilities that they may have, to just have one day. So they need a ballot in the mail. They get their mail ballot, they fill it out, they send it back securely, either by mail with no postage required, or they put it in the drop box, or they deliver it to a vote center. And that's their participation. Or they can't make it on Tuesday, but they can make it on Saturday. So then they come down to a vote center, and maybe they have to take care of their mom in Simi Valley, even though they live in Port Hueneme. They go to the vote center in Simi Valley, they cast their ballot, take mom to the vote center in Simi Valley because she likes to vote in person. It's taken care of, it's handled. So I feel like those options are important to allow for participation, for democracy. Why should only particular people, those who have the freedom to be able to show up on one day, be enabled to vote? Democracy means we all participate. It should mean that we all participate. And then, there are multiple safeguards that allow that, excuse me, one sec. There are multiple safeguards that protect the integrity of the ballot. When you register to vote, you have to provide a portion of your social security number or your driver's license, because that's what the state uses to verify against, the vital records or the DMV records. And the state is the keeper of the master registration. And then locally, you have to provide your correct address to the county office, so that you're not voting in, District 2 when you live in District 4. And then when you vote on your vote by mail ballot, you are signing with your signature, which is compared to what we have on file from when you registered. And you're signing under penalty of perjury that, that this is your ballot, that you're entitled to vote, et cetera, et cetera. The ballot drop boxes now all have language that admonishes people about tampering with the ballot box or with elections is a felony. And there are instructions on there for if people see someone messing around with the box, intimidating voters, or doing any other, unlawful shenanigans, that they can contact our office and we will handle it. What else? When people go to show up at the vote center, they have to give they fill out a voter intake sheet, which has their name, their address, their date of birth on there. Give it to our election workers. They look them up in the system, which, by the way, the system is a secure line that we set up that is directly from the vote center to the elections headquarters at the county government center. So it's a completely secure line. And we look them up and we verify that they have not already cast a vote by mail ballot. If they have, if they have not, then they're issued a ballot there at the vote center. And once that ballot is printed, that person's record is locked in the system. So say they take that ballot, they vote it, submit it, and then they go home and they try to vote their vote by mail ballot. When we receive their ballot, we're going to look it up and we're going to say, this person already voted in person. Something's fishy here. So that vote by mail ballot is not going to be counted. What other measures do we take? Oh, people, with the additional drop boxes that have been placed, the additional permanent drop boxes that have been placed now that we're a VCA county, people have posted comments on social media like, oh, that just allows people to stuff the ballot boxes and then they're going to count and all these people are going to be able to vote multiple times. And no, it's not how it works. The ballot you get in the mail, you get one ballot. It has to be submitted in the envelope that is provided that you sign and fill out with your name and address. And you only get one. So, we don't just count stuff that's thrown into the ballot box. It has to be submitted properly. And if people don't sign it, then we contact them and we say, hey, your signature is missing. Submit your signature or come down to the office, sign your ballot, and then we'll be able to count it. Otherwise, it doesn't get counted.
Michelle, let me ask you, because there's been a lot of controversy across the nation about how voting actually takes place. There are those individuals that believe you need to have a driver's license or an ID when you go and vote. And others believe that it's discriminatory when you ask for an ID or some type of way to identify yourself in order to vote. Is your office that you plan on becoming the top elected official of all the elections, is it your place to create those types of policies, or does that come from the state, or is that a federal thing? Who gets to set those types of policies?
It comes from the state. So we follow the elections code, which dictates how elections are to be conducted. There's also a California Code of Regs that provides further direction on how elections are conducted. But the elections code and the Code of Regs, as they currently stand, do not require or call for people to present identification at the polls. And we would not be able to just unilaterally decide that because, it would have to be dictated by the state. Well, what does ID mean? Does it mean a driver's license? Does it mean a military ID? Does it mean, a utility bill? Right. Does it have to have a picture? If it's a college student and they have a college ID, does that count? What about, a gym membership card or, I mean, like, what does this mean? What does ID mean? I know in some states where if people don't have a driver's license or a passport or whatever, the elections officials can provide an ID card. So then what mechanism would we have to do that? I can tell you there's 4 voters in my household: myself, my husband, and my son who's 20 and my daughter who's 18. The 20-year-old and the 18-year-old, even though I've been pushing them, neither of them drives. They don't have a driver's license. They don't have an ID from their college, even though I've been bugging them to get that too. But I mean, if they were required to provide identification, they probably, and then they don't have bills. They don't have a cell phone. We pay their cell phone. My kids are sounding kind of spoiled right now, but I mean, they don't have a utility bill to be able to present. What would they be able to present at the polls if ID is required? Not everybody has identification. They have passports from when they were kids, but those are expired. Well, is an expired ID allowable? Does it have to have a picture? Does it have to have a physical description? Is it like when you go get your signature notarized and you have to provide a picture ID? So, all those questions would have to be answered before the voter ID question, before that would be a requirement. And I don't have a problem with it, but there would have to be some kind of mechanism for, there would have to be a definition first. What is an ID? What is an acceptable ID? And then it would have to be, if someone does not have one of those acceptable forms of ID, what could they present? What is the county going to do to provide identification for them? Absolutely. To be able to present at the polls?
Well, I appreciate that because, again, a lot of people think, well, that your office will be able to make policies on their own, but it sounds like, no, that's not the case. If it doesn't come from the state's Secretary of State's office, then you can't make a promise that you ultimately won't be able to keep.
Secretary of State or the California legislature, because they write election related bills as well.
So there are tons of, I guess, mechanisms in place to keep everyone safe. And, to me personally, I believe, when somebody hears like, well, ID, well, that's easy. It's a driver's license. It's something issued by the state. Well, but then you kind of get into that whole thing of there's multiple things. What if I have an ID that was issued by another state and I just moved to California? Mm-hmm. Does that count, even though it takes X amount of days for my ID to come in from the mail? Does my temporary printed out, one from the DMV counts? So there's a lot of those questions, and I get what you're saying. But, it's good to know that the county itself can't make policies on their own. It has Correct. To come from the state.
That's correct.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And it's also great to hear that there are procedures, safeguards in place when it comes to our elections. I have been seeing, I don't know if I'm just paying attention more or there's more boxes being put out. Those
there are.
So I'm seeing them. They're secured to the floor. They're out there in the public's view. They're not hidden.
And they're locked when they're not in use. They won't get unlocked until the ballots go out on May the 9th.
Oh, see, now I was trying to throw my junk mail in there or something. I guess that's not an option.
What? I never got that bill.
I think the county got it. Contact the county. But either way, I appreciate the information you give. A lot of great information of safeguards of our elections. Some information about the office itself, what you plan on bringing to the office, a background on who you are as an individual and who you are as a candidate and what you want to bring. So I appreciate this opportunity to once again have this conversation with you. I recall back in 2016, me and you were actually running together. I was running for
Yes.
city council, you were for city clerk, and
Yep.
you were at every event.
Everything.
So as things begin to open up, I'm sure you're going to be jumping all over and people are going to get sick and tired of seeing you. But it is one of those things that shows that you are going to be active, though. And I believe, if, and correct me if I'm wrong, even while you were the city clerk in Oxnard, you still attended quite a bit of events that dealt with the city, and not only with the city, but even local organizations. You were everywhere, which is a little unheard of. To have a city clerk who many people, like you mentioned, don't really know what the city clerk does, but you were out there still amongst the people. So that's going to be real great to be able to see that. And I know Mark Lunn has done that throughout his career as the county clerk and recorder, being out there to those events throughout the county, and educating people. So that's always great. Michelle,
It's really important for elected officials to be active in the community. I mean,
absolutely.
the people who put you in that position, they want to see your face.
Yeah,
So yeah, you owe it to your community to be active.
absolutely. Any final words as we wrap up this evening?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Yes. I just want to let people know that, the ballots will go out beginning May the 9th in the mail. In-person voting begins May the 28th at 10 voting centers, opening up to June the 4th at an additional 41 voting centers. But I just want to, and then if you do choose to use your vote by mail ballot, you can track it. Sign up on where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. And, I've been using it for years. I appreciate getting the messages. It's like, oh, your ballot's been received at the post office. Oh, your ballot's come to the elections office. Your signature has been verified and your ballot will be counted. It's like, wonderful. So I would really encourage everyone to use that. Where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. Going back to the candidacy really quickly, I'm the only candidate who is nonpartisan. I have been registered no party preference for many years now. And I made that decision way back in Port Hueneme before I ever even thought about running for any elected office, because I felt like I wanted the public constituents and the council candidates, everybody that I was dealing with, I wanted them to feel, that I was trustworthy as someone who was non-political, coming with no political biases, to treat them the same, to make decisions based on, the established, legal parameters and not any political bias or advantage. So I really feel, as I've moved up in my career as elected city clerk, as assistant clerk recorder, and now, hopefully running to be the elected county clerk recorder, I really think it's important for those positions to be nonpartisan, non-biased, look at the law, don't have any, preferences or anything like that. But, so that's something that's really important to me. And that decision comes with the consequence of going into this race. I have no party that can back me, because they don't back candidates who are not of their party. So that's been a bit of an uphill battle in trying to get endorsements, support, raise money. But I do have a plethora of endorsements. My boss, Mark Lunn, Jackie Irwin, the entire Oxnard City Council, past and current council members from the city of Port Hueneme, from Ventura, from Camarillo, Thousand Oaks. So I've got a wide base of support, in addition to the National Latino Peace Officers Association advocacy, the Ventura County Professional Peace Officers Association, SEIU 721, Central Coast Labor Council. And by the way, SEIU and CCLC, they endorsed me back in 2016. So they believe in me. They've thrown their endorsement, their influence behind me. But I would really like to ask people for three quick things. I will make this really fast, Daniel. Please visit my website, michelle4vc.com. The 4 is FOR, not the number 4, Michelle4, FOR, VC.com. There you'll learn more about me. You can make a donation, which would be super helpful as I'm attempting to raise money here. And if you would follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, the handle is Michelle4VC again. And please share my posts, because then that'll get out to your network and will help spread the word that way. And then on June 7th, please vote for me. Tell your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, folks at the grocery store, the gas station, wherever you go, about my candidacy. And, it would be really helpful to, get that word out and let people know that there is a choice. First of all, that there is a race going on, because sometimes folks, their eyes don't get all the way down to those, as we call them, down ballot races. But let people know that that I'm running and that there is a contest here, and I've got the experience to and the nonpartisanship to really do a good job for the county. So that's it. I know we're trying to wrap up. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thanks for being a good friend and for your time. And feel free to contact me through my website.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Michelle Ascencion, candidate for the County Clerk and Recorder's Office. Again, June primary is on June 7th. Ventura County is one of those counties that are able to be that voter's choice. So you're able to vote up to 10 days before the actual election. So you have multiple opportunities and no excuse not to vote.
No excuses.
So be sure to vote, whether it's by mail, visiting a polling site, and you just heard it. You can go anywhere in the county and vote. So if you work in Thousand Oaks, you can vote in Thousand Oaks. If you work in Oxnard, vote in Oxnard. But either way, vote. That's so important. Remember, if you don't vote, you don't have the right to complain. And that's coming from me, not from Michelle. So ladies and gentlemen, again, please be sure to visit our website at michelle4vc.com. That's FORVC.com. And be sure to vote on June 7th. Michelle, again, thank you. It's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you, learn more about you, and I am excited for your race, and best of luck on the campaign trail. This is Oxnard Live, all live and 100% real. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.